months of 1932, on a trip to Mission, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, the answer came to him. The Hyborian Age, a period lying between the sinking of Atlantis and the cataclysms that shaped our modern world, populated by the forebears, the veritable archetypes of all the barbarians he so loved to study. The character Conan stalked full-grown out of oblivion and set me at work recording the saga of his adventures. These exploits took place in a world populated by Elizabethan pirates, Irish reavers, and Barbary corsairs, American frontiersmen and Cossack raiders, Egyptian sorcerers and followers of Roman mystery cults, medieval knights and Assyrian armies. All were given disguises, but with no attempt to actually hide their identities. In fact, Howard tried to give them names that would allow the reader to guess their identities without too much effort. He wanted us to recognize them instantly, but with the wink that says, "We know this is a story, right? On with it." Can any reader fail to recognize that Afghanistan is Afghanistan, or that Vendhya is India? Surely not. With his creation of the Hyborian Age, Howard had created a world in which his beloved historical barbarians could run riot, and he could weave those tales packed with action and drama that he loved to tell. It's a brilliant concept, and one I believe may have been suggested to him by G.K. Chesterton, whose epic poem, The Ballad of the White Horse, was one of Howard's favorites, to judge not only from his effusive comments in 2 different letters to his friend Clyde Smith in 1927, but from his frequent use of quotations from the poem as epigrams or verse headings for his stories, and the fact that he was still quoting from it in letters as late as 1935. The Ballad of the White Horse tells of King Alfred and the Battle of Ethandune, but Chesterton admits that all of it that is not frankly fictitious, as in any prose romance about the past, is meant to emphasize tradition rather than history. Because the work he wants to celebrate, the fight for the Christian civilization against the heathen nihilism, was really done by generation after generation. He created fictitious Roman, Celtic, and Saxon heroes to share in the glory of victory with Alfred. "It is the chief value of legend," he wrote, "to mix up the centuries while preserving the sentiment, to see all ages in a sort of splendid foreshortening. That is the use of tradition. It telescopes history." Chesterton, of course, was hardly the first to create such a literary work. The Arthurian romances of Chrétien de Troyes and Sir Thomas Malory come to mind, and earlier still, the Norse sagas and the ancient legend of Beowulf. But Chesterton's statement of rationale may have wormed its way into Howard's consciousness to emerge years later as the Hyborian Age. Howard did write an epic poem, The Ballad of King Geraint, that was an echo of Chesterton's. He depicted a valiant last stand of the Celtic tribes of Britain and Ireland against the invading Anglo-Saxons. But it wasn't until his creation of the Hyborian Age in 1932 that he was able to put this telescoping idea to really effective use, turning history into what Lovecraft termed vivid artificial legendary. Because Howard wrote a lengthy history of the Hyborian Age, and took pains to make it a self-consistent world, some critics have placed him within what is termed the imaginary worlds tradition of fantasy, exemplified by such inventive writers as George MacDonald, William Morris, Lord Dunsany, and J.R.R. Tolkien. But the Hyborian Age is historical, not imaginary. It is simply a nexus where elements from different historical eras may come together for the sake of the story. Part of the appeal of the Conan stories is that they seem so real because we recognize the world in which Conan moves. And Howard was not a literary stylist in the manner of these imaginary worlds writers. He was a storyteller who preferred clear, direct, simple language with a minimum of description. There is, to be sure, considerable poetry in his best prose, as the opening chapter of The Hour of the Dragon amply demonstrates. Howard was raised on poetry, which his mother read to him, and was himself perhaps